Today I have 6 tips that you may not know when it comes to iRacing. And if you do know all of these by chance, or if you have any of your own, make sure you add them to the comments below so we can make this nice community of everyone learning from each other. And you never know, someone might post something, or you might know something that someone else doesn't. Tip number 1, pit stops. Pit stops are race ending, or they can be. Imagine your most hated track, the nastiest hairpin, a section of the Nordschleife where you completely balls up and burn and die every time. For example, Detroit at Belle Isle, where the cement wall, everyone goes into it, either turn 1 or it's turn 5 or 6 or something like that around the back straight. The Dipper at Bathurst, something where there is no room for error. There is a cement wall. If you get it wrong, your race can be over. And that is pit stops in theory, but no one gives it the attention that they deserve. So next time you join a practice session, go out, do 2 laps, get used to how things are feeling, have a look at your fuel consumption, and practice a pit stop. Know exactly where you can brake on warm tires, know exactly where you can stop. You can go into the pits a little bit over, very, very minor room for error on your speed coming in. Don't push that because you get black flag. So if you stuff up this pit entrance, not only do you waste up to 5 seconds trying to get the gauge of speed right, but more so if you come in too quick, you didn't know where to brake, you get a black flag, 30 seconds delayed. 30 seconds delayed is huge. Okay, plus it just causes drama and you get a bit stressed because you're trying to catch a time up, and either way you race over. Practice your pit stops, and for a further tip as well, once you're in the pits and you're on the limiter, you can turn that off. How good's the sound effects, by the way? You can turn that off and go, if the speed's 60 kilometers an hour, for example, you can sit on 61, 62, altering between those. You will gain a slight bit of time. I don't do it. I don't recommend it. I'm not that high level where saving a second or 2 in the pits is going to make or break the race, but if you are, then try that out. Tip number 2, while you're on the grid of an iRacing event, in everything that does not pit, or IMSA, the 45-minute races, our ones you want to fit new tires, the 45 minutes you don't want to, the time wasted is not worth it. So every time you want to make a habit of this on the grid, you cycle through the black box, you're turning off tires and off fuel if it's a race where you don't pit. What this will do is, worst case scenario, you are in an accident, you hold escape or you eject it out, get towed back to the pits. You won't waste time getting a pit service or parts of a pit service that you don't actually need. And if you're not running a overlay that tells you exactly how much fuel you need, make sure you have some understanding of how much fuel your car needs. If you always race the Porsche RSR in the IMSA category, or if you always do something that pits the same car, you'll know that the race is always the same length. The tracks, you know, they may vary a little bit, but if you pick a high-speed track, you look at the fuel use, because if you're flat out more of the time, you use more of the fuel, then you'll never really use more than that. So you can always have a good idea of how much the car actually needs before the start of the race on the grid, or how much you've set to refuel for when you come into the pits. Stuff like this will save you a lot of time. It's a little finicky at the start, but you know, if worst comes to worst, those seconds do count. Tip number 3 is all about value. Don't ever buy an iRacing subscription without 25% off. And I know a few of you would have heard that and really pulled your hair out because you're like, what? They do discounts, especially if you're new to it. Yes, every Black Friday they do 25% off yearly, biannually memberships. So 25% off brings it down quite a lot. They've also just done one in February, so it looks like, from my understanding of the last couple of years, they kind of do a sale early in the year, February, March, maybe a mid-year one around tax time, but definitely November and February to kind of keep their play base up and keep everyone on those yearly subscriptions. To get the most out of your iRacing dollars, a bit of a bonus tip here on number 3. I have a video explaining how to get the most value for your dollars spent when it comes to purchasing tracks and cars. So make sure you check that one out if you don't have a credit card that can just swipe and buy every single product you like, because this stuff really does add up. Tip number 4, always do 8 events for the series that you've entered in or plan to. Now, if you're just trying out Formula 3, for example, here and there, you like to do some of the tracks but not all of them, well, don't commit yourself to one of those. But if you have a favorite category, for me it's the Porsche Carrera Cup. It's one of the series that I'm focusing on for this season, and there's 4 seasons per year. Every 3 months one will reset after week 13. So every time one of them rolls around, you can change then, but just try and stick to 1 unless it's going completely disastrous. What this will do is if you do 8 of them, you'll get the credits at the end of the iRacing season. They actually give you money, which if you do enough to get your maximum 10 iRacing dollars or credits at the end of every season, so you get $40 to spend over the year, there's 4 pieces of content. Keep in mind also with the value of things that if you get 3 parts or more, you can get discounts on buying it. So don't ever buy 2 pieces of content, I would recommend, and don't ever buy 5 pieces of content. The same thing, you get a bonus or a discount at 3 and a discount at 6 items or more. Along with this, you'll actually be participating in the ladder. Who was to say that if you don't do quite good throughout the season in that category, you hone your skills with it, you really learn the inside out of a car because they all do drive very differently when you find out the small details of each car. Then you might actually place up the ladder, and there is certificates on iRacing. You can check under your account when you first won, when you first did the top 3, I believe, in a series. So if you really hone your skills on one, you'll be more inclined, more committed to it. It's more enjoyable. You get your credits end of the year. So doing 8 races minimum, if not 12 out of 12, if you can and own all the content, is very much something I believe you should do. Number 5, overlays do help. Now they're a pain to set up because you can't run iRacing in full screen. And people have been asking me in the comments to make a video on this. I did record it, I just need to edit it. But if you download overlay, some you have to pay for, like Caps, I believe. Race Labs is the one I use. I love the options it has. It seems to do the right job. It helps because it tells you exactly how much fuel you need to put back in when you pit. It tells you how, it's just well laid out. Sometimes they have a track graphic if you like that. They have a who's leading up in the top left corner, and you can set it from the first few cars in front of you and behind you, or there's the top 10 or whatever it is. There's many different options, and you can set up and really have things on the screen, the information that you want personally. And because you stuck around to tip number 6, we're going to talk a little bit more about the actual driving, the actual playing the game of iRacing. Hopefully these things help you out a little bit. They surely would have helped me out when I first joined iRacing. First one is starting in the game. Starting is something that is really easy to get right. You just have to have it set on what you're trying to do. A lot of people kind of treat cars a little bit differently, and I'm not saying like I get a gun start all the time. There's probably techniques that the pros use that are much more detailed, but generally, and I've seen a guy do this on Twitch, a very high rated driver, are very easy, and it works in nearly every car. Just depends a little bit differently on how much clutch you let out. And all you have to do is practice it once or twice in a practice session, along with your pit stops, relating back to number 1, don't forget that. But if you hold it flat out on the start, when the lights go red, there's no need to hold it early, because some people like to do that and want to blow their engines up. Lights go red, hold it pinned, you're watching your clutch. Now I physically watch the clutch graphic to see how much I've released. And as it goes green, your peripheral will see that. You just let go of the clutch down to about 60% released. So between 40 and 30% remaining of the bar. So if the bar is this high, about this much, you drop it to there, that's normally the threshold. And I want you to find where the threshold is in the practice. And what I'm talking about, what I mean by threshold is, if you do a practice start and you let go of 70%, bang, instant, wheel spin. You found the threshold. It was too aggressive, too early. You drop it to 60 and get the technique right. Like you're trying to, you won't do it too aggressively because you're trying to get to a certain point anyway. Then the car will drive off, and as soon as the rev picks up and you can hear that, and it starts to drive off the line better and put the power down, you let go of it fully. That's it. That's all it is. You'll beat half of the people on the grid, no trouble at all, probably more. Second section of this is trail braking. If you don't know what trail braking is, it's generally applying the pressure in a straight line aggressively to slow the car, and then you keep the brake on as you slightly bleed off. The more you turn, the less brake you have to have. And what this will do is keeps the load on the front outside wheel and helps the car turn around a little bit more. Now, too much trail brake, you'll spin it out. But if you haven't been trail braking, you really need to, especially in formula cars, because they're like momentum based a lot of the time. every category really you need to try brake in. And then lightly joining itself to that last little bit I mentioned, if you are spinning out coming into the corner, because something that happens a lot, because I bought the Audi, especially with mid-engine or rear-engine cars, okay? So if you guys own these, this one's pretty crucial, and you might have learnt this already the hard way. Pitch a spar out the back. I can't remember the name, but it's the flat out in some cars, double left before you go into the chicane right at the end. So it's kind of like a straight, some cars you do have to back off just so it'll turn a little bit better. But in the Audi, it's one of those cars where backing off is crucial because they don't like to turn super well, or they used to anyway when I used to drive it a season or two ago. But if you back off in these rear engine cars or mid engine cars too aggressively, it will turn around. And for the longest time, I thought it was because when I was coming into corners, I was hitting the brake too hard. Sure, that's a very, generic way that people crash coming into the corners and lose it. But it might actually be in certain GT cars, for example, especially, that you're releasing the throttle too aggressively. So you kind of need to feed it off a bit lightly, have the finesse that road racing requires. That spar corner out the back, I've binned it and a rouge many times by just off the throttle. The back end gets too much weight transfer, and that's all she wrote. Thanks for making it to the end of the video. Remember, you can add anything that you may know that I didn't mention into the comments below. People will really appreciate it, and I would really appreciate you liking and subscribing to the channel if it did help you out. It's always very appreciated by the small channels here on YouTube. Thanks for watching, guys. I will see you next time.